Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I can hear myself. You must be able to hear me. Excellent. This microphone is working. Thank you all for coming for this session with the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority on she doesn't say that, but on mass rapid transit, the need for it in a global city. So as some of you probably know, I used to be MP for South Cambridgeshire, and I was actually born in Cambridge. I grew up in Cambridge. I've seen and lived and experienced the traffic problems in Cambridge. It is a massive constraint on growth, and one of the things that definitely needs doing is we need to get Cambridge moving again. But the trouble is, it's obviously a medieval city at heart. It's got lots of narrow streets. It's also got incredibly well-educated and vocal residents who also are wealthy enough to employ lawyers to try and judicially review anything when anyone tries to do anything. But there is clearly the need for it. It is the boom city of the UK. I know that as when I was MP there, and I kept meeting various secretaries of state for communities, housing, local governments, and they just kept saying, Cambridge, you're the economic hotspot of the UK, and we absolutely need growth in the UK, and everyone across the country is looking to us to try and deliver it, and transport is one of the constraints there. So we're going to solve it today, and hopefully by the end of this session, we're going to end at 3 o'clock. Hopefully by 3 o'clock, we will have spades on the ground digging the first mass rapid transit system. I'm absolutely delighted to have a panel. There's no one better to lay out the problem and indeed the solutions. I could announce them one by one, but I'm actually going to ask them to announce their own names and exactly their titles, and then I'll come to them to do little opening speeches and then Q&As. So all think of your questions. Andrew, I'm expecting you to ask lots of questions, my predecessor there. And we will stop at 3 o'clock. So, introduce yourself. Yeah. Go.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane Hutchins. I'm director of Cambridge Science Park, which is owned by Trinity College. They've owned the land since 1546, so a fairly patient capital there. We're one of the largest employment sites in the knowledge economy across the Oxford and Cambridge arc, and we have very ambitious plans for growth.
Good afternoon, Philip Harker. I'm Technical Director for Cambridge Growth Company, and as you'll know, the consultation to potentially become a development corporation is closed, and we are awaiting the government's decision, so let's hope that's all going to be positive as we go forward.
Good afternoon, Peter Cushing. I'm Light Rail Commissioner for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. Light rail in title, but pretty much mode agnostic, more MRT centred than light rail specifically, but helping the mayor in terms of finding his way through this very heavily populated minefield, frankly.
Good afternoon, I'm Steve Weir, Director for Economic Growth at Coventry City Council. And one of the things I'm responsible for is Coventry Very Light Rail, which I'll tell you a little bit more about as we get into the discussion.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for that. And to make things easy for me, I seated them in speaking order. So we're literally going to go down the panel like this. So if we could go to you, Jane, first, as Director of the Science Park, one of the many science parks, but the most famous and biggest, I think. What is the need for mass rapid transit or improved transit in Cambridge?
Okay, so yes, you're right. We were the first science park in the UK. We are one of the largest, actually, in Europe still, which is astonishing. We have 7,500 people based on site. They don't all work in Cambridge, although a lot do. We analyse their transport modes every year to see who's coming in by what method, and 25% cycle, which is a fantastic result. I used to when I first arrived at the science park, but then had to move house a bit too far away. But we're very proud of the fact that so many of our staff come in by sustainable methods of transport, but too many of them drive. The reason they drive is there aren't the alternatives in public transport that work for them, for their working patterns, their working hours. One of the most frequent questions that I'm asked when a company is considering setting itself up in Cambridge or moving to Cambridge, either from elsewhere in the UK or from overseas, is how do we access the talent and where does the talent live? And where the talent lives is a really complex question because, as we all know, I think, Cambridge, being a medieval and ancient and highly protected city, now has a chronic shortage of housing, particularly affordable housing. And we draw on a very wide catchment zone. Where people live is quite a long way away. And to get into the city, too many of them have no alternative but to drive. And then when we get into the city, it's actually really hard to navigate across the city because we have this stunningly beautiful medieval heart, which we're all very proud of and we want to preserve, rightly, but it's a big block. So we need to enable people working and living in Cambridge to travel quickly and easily and ideally cheaply. So it's a true incentive to get out of their cars across the city. You can cycle. I can cycle from the Science Park and the Northeast Quarter over to the West Campus of the university on the western fringe of the city in half an hour on a very clapped out bike. You know, we're not talking about carbon fibre road bikes here. It is doable, but it's not appropriate for everybody. And it's not just a problem for employees working in the city, it's a problem for people living in the city. Getting across the city is a challenge because of the fact that the buses go into the city and then you have to walk across the city to get a bus that goes out to the other side of it. So we do have real challenges, and it's a very hot topic. And as you rightly said, we have a very, very engaged population with lots of opinions, which makes it fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you for setting out so clearly the challenge there. Now coming to Phil, who I think here it says Beth. So Beth actually, oh no, you managed to change the name. No, it's Phil, definitely not Beth. Cambridge Growth Company, the clue's in the name.
Not today.
Maybe tomorrow. The clue's in the name, Cambridge Growth Company. Tell us your ambitions, but also the need for transport or mass rapid transit as a solution to that.
Absolutely. So Cambridge Growth Company was commissioned by government back in March to undertake a mass rapid transit study. So basically a strategic outline business case, start of the process, to look at how we can unlock an existing congestion problem, unlock and enable that future growth that's needed in Cambridge. Cambridge, is that's as a constraint. So transport is that constraint, one of the constraint issues. So how do we, remove that as a constraint issue to enable that growth, to enable that confidence into the market, to enable that investment to continue? So this is the first part of the work. So we've been commissioned to do it, and we've got to deliver this strategic outline case by before the end of the year. So we've engaged a consultant team. So we've got WSP consultants to support us. We're working in collaboration with CPCA and the officers there in terms of what they're doing for transport strategy, which is supporting the local plan. And we've done some stakeholder engagement work, and we've looked at all of the previous schemes that have actually been around in the Cambridge area, and there's been multiple schemes proposed and never quite got off the ground. So we've looked at all of those, and we're doing our own work around analysing what they are, analysing where all the places are that we've got to get people from, to, between and around, looking at all of the sort of networks that are in place, bringing that long list of options together. And so we're in this process now. So we started in March. We've got to finish it in a number of months' time. So we're in this long list selection process at the moment. We're going to be applying a series of multi-criteria analysis on those. What are the best solutions? What's missing? What more could be into place? To look at the various options that can come forward. So this first stage of work is actually just going to be coming to a short list of options that we can sort of take forward and actually present back up to government and say, look, there's a case here, there's a need to actually change, there's a massive need to invest and actually unlock this barrier. And these are the sort of range of short list of options that could potentially do it. Let us get to the next stage in the process. Let us actually start to work out the detail and actually move it forward. So in this first stage at the moment, we've got to get past this hurdle with DFT and Treasury and say, look, we've demonstrated the need. Without it, we're not going to get the growth that we need, and we've got to move forward. So that's what we're doing at the moment in collaboration with others, certainly with the Combined Authority, the CPCA, all the councils. So it's crucial, engaging, exciting, and highly challenging.
Excellent, thank you. Before we come to Peter, can I just ask one question? Is how you mentioned you're doing it in collaboration with CPCA. How does that fit in there? Because you've obviously got the mayor and strategic.
Yeah. So that collaboration is that we're working alongside. So we're being very open what we're doing. We're sharing engagement strategies. So in terms of the earlier engagement that CPCA did regarding the transport strategy work that they've done, we've actually joined into the second phase of that engagement process. So actually, it's a journey because this is part of a potential solution within that transport strategy. So it's a journey along the way, and actually to ensure that we can get as much alignment within this process as possible. So working together.
Okay. Now coming to Peter, the light rail commissioner, but actually mode neutral for the mayor.
Yeah. Well, let me sort of clarify that. I've worked in 7 countries, in 12 different cities. I've delivered MRT systems from inception through design, construction, delivery to operation, extension, renewal, etc. So, and predominantly, I have a specialism in light rail, but principally always been about a blended mass rapid transit system. The point about mass rapid transit is it's not only a solution, and we recognise we need a solution to get people to where they want to be, whether it's for leisure, whether it's for work or anything else. But we also need something that's going to enable future development. Cambridge is looking to triple the size of its economy in the next 25 years. You're not going to do that if you can't move across the city or you can't get people into work. And if you can't do that, that will restrict that growth. And Cambridge is hugely important, not just to Cambridgeshire and Peterborough and the middle part of England, but to UK PLC because of the revenue and the benefits it generates through the science parks, through the university and everything else that goes on there. So massively, massively important. Part of my role with the Combined Authority is helping the mayor and his team find their way through all that mire, frankly. And it is difficult, it's tough, and Phil is beavering away with CGC, and we're working with them to get through that, but also to find out what is going to be the best solution. What do we do to better benefit Cambridge, and how does that get delivered? I've seen the mistakes that have been made elsewhere, so I'm going to try and make sure that the CA doesn't make the same mistakes. You can rectify those mistakes, but you can never recover from them. So make sure we get it right first time and deliver a thoroughly good system to make sure we get that development in the next 25 years.
And what are the key mistakes that should be avoided then? What are you telling the mayor needs to be avoided?
Don't name names is what I've learned along the way as well. By being too wedded to an initial solution without first going through a process that says, is that the right solution? And being dogmatic about it, and then ending up in a position where actually you delivered something that isn't quite as good as we thought it was going to be and doesn't do what we wanted it to be. Either it's not flexible enough, or it's in the wrong place, or we've not put it into the right places. One of the biggest mistakes is that people don't identify earlier the big revenue generators. So what are the big destinations people want to get to, whether for leisure, for work, for medical facilities, for example, to whatever they want to get, to make sure you connect those places to where they live. There's one system that I won't mention, but I can tell you that it's known as the system that takes you from where you used to live to where you used to go to work. And it's because they envisaged the system. It took them that long to build it that the town had changed so much by the time they got it in place. They'd pulled down all the houses from where it went from, and all the industry where it went to was gone. So effectively, it's doing a circle, doing nothing really. So that's the sort of mistakes that you want to avoid. And it is a long time scale. It doesn't happen in 6 months. It's a number of years. So you have to make sure that you take the time to get it right in the first place and make sure you future-proof it.
Excellent. And then coming to our last speaker, Steve, we're at Coventry. So Coventry is obviously another old city, but actually a bit farther along this journey because you're actually piloting a new, the very light rail. Tell us about what you're doing there and how you've done it.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not mode agnostic, or at least for today's conversation, I'm allowed not to be. So we're developing Coventry Very Light Rail. So this is a lightweight battery-powered tram that's specifically designed for medium cities. There are a few things about it that make it appropriate for medium cities. So the first thing is it doesn't involve any overhead cables being battery-powered, so you don't need to worry about that sort of infrastructure. And the second thing is it can take much sharper turning circles than traditional trams. And finally, because we need to dig so much less out of the road surface in order to put Very Light Rail down, it makes it a lot cheaper, it makes it a lot faster to put down, and it means that you actually don't have to take out the utilities when you put in Very Light Rail. So we're at the stage of demonstrating this technology. So this is R&D that the City Council has done itself with its partners at the University of Warwick, and then with local manufacturers. Very lucky to have that local manufacturing base where you can do that kind of work. It's a very innovative city, I think very much like Cambridge in that respect. So last year we ran a 200-metre demonstrator in the city centre, which 3,000 people rode with a vehicle that we developed from scratch in Coventry. We turned our highway into a tramway in 8 weeks, which is unheard of in the industry. That's what that new track form allows you to do. And we're really proud with how far we've taken Very Light Rail. Our next stage is a longer demonstrator next year, where we'll demonstrate 800 metres of track from Coventry Railway Station out to Coventry University. That will be in a live traffic environment. So we'll be running a new generation vehicle that is safe enough to run next to live traffic. We're starting on site with installing that track next year, and it'll be complete the following year, and that'll be our next demonstrator, our next chance to show this technology to the world. So hoping to be able to contribute some really interesting stuff to today's conversation about a possible solution for what you're trying to achieve in your area.
Right. Excellent. Thank you very much, and good luck with it in Coventry. So can I open it to the floor to questions, if there are any particular questions, but I might abuse the chair's privilege. We have a roving mic to ask the first question. So the first question for you, you're doing this study on the mass rapid transit. You're mode agnostic still at the moment, but what do you see as the main challenges to doing it? What you mentioned earlier thoughts, the mayor, when I was elected MP, James Palmer, he had plans for an underground system in Cambridge, which was £4.5 billion, I think. And the question there was where you're going to get the money. What do you see as the main challenges that you need to overcome? I'm going to ask you, and then Philip. Peter, I mean, sorry.
So at the moment, really, the main challenge is to ensure that this strategic case maintains that due diligence, that process, that robustness, so that when it is submitted, we actually get approval for the next stage, which is when all the real sort of detailed work starts to begin. This I don't think we necessarily have a problem demonstrating the need in Cambridge. You know, the government's agenda, the growth agenda, our agenda, the mayor's agenda is all about doubling down, tripling the GDP, the number of homes to support that. All of this in an area, in the Greater Cambridgeshire area, which already has a major transport roadblock, as it were. You know, so that needs to be unlocked, and there needs to be a step change in how that's going to happen. So that case for change, that need, which this first stage study really demonstrates, we feel confident that we will be able to demonstrate that back to government and say, look, let us get on with that next stage. So that's what we need to do.
Peter, you've installed mass rapid transit systems in cities around the world. I'm at Manchester, Birmingham, and a whole load of European cities. What do you see as particularly the particular challenges in Cambridge? We talked about it being a small medieval city in the centre. That must present its own challenges.
Yeah, several challenges in Cambridge. When I first met the mayor, I said to him, look, I hope I'm not going to insult you, but I think Cambridge is the world's biggest debating society. You spent years talking about this and nobody's ever done anything, so somebody needs to make a decision and get working. Because unless you do that, you're never going to produce anything and you're never going to improve anything. The challenges in Cambridge, I see that the first challenge and the really critical one is the city centre, as you rightly said. Very, not congested, but constricted. So very difficult to put a system through a city that is that tight. However, a VLR could be exactly the mechanism that you can use to do that. And there are ways of doing that and joining it up at either end of the city centre with a conventional system or bus system, for example. So, and innovation, Cambridge is a very innovative city in lots of ways, but innovation starts in here. It's not about the latest tech, it's not about the latest super idea, it's about thinking about it properly and getting it right in the first place. That's the first innovation, and that's what needs to happen. If we can do that and come up with some smart solutions that are not overly expensive, like 4 kilometres of tunnelling under the city centre, then we've got every chance of being successful with it. Can we start to move things? The tunnelling is expensive in the first place, but if you can afford it, that's not the only obstacle. Actual operating cost of operating underground is colossal. And if you put a station in the middle of it, so people are moving underground to access vehicles, then that adds another layer of expense, another layer of operating expertise, another layer of safety management, etc. So it's an ongoing cost, not just the initial cost of tunnelling. If you can avoid tunnelling, best thing to do.
Excellent. Opening up to questions, and I think, my predecessor, Andrew Lansley, had a question.
Thank you very much.
Lord Lansley.
Thank you very much, Anthony. For these purposes, Andrew Lansley, chair of the Cambridgeshire Development Forum over these last 10 years. And seen from the point of view of the development community, just picking up on the point I think Jane made at an early stage, there are already large numbers of people who travel significant distances in order to work in and around Cambridge. And if we are going to grow the Cambridge economy, it's not going to be just by means of Cambridge West, Cambridge East, Cambridge North, Cambridge South. We're going to be outside Cambridge on a much bigger footprint. And it seems to me that before we get into the mode, we have to have established what that geographic footprint looks like, because it may have to be quite substantial. Now, some of that will be heavy rail, and linking into the heavy rail is quite a good opportunity, but I'm not entirely sure how light rail sometimes manages some of those distances, as opposed to what's happening right in the city centre. But I think the starting point seems to me, and the question is, what is the geography for the mass rapid transit study?
Excellent. I'm actually going to bring in Jane here just to start with, but I know you run the science part, but just that geographic question, from your point of view, what's the geographic need for it? And then we'll come to Philip and Peter and Stuart.
So I think I mentioned in my opening that we survey all the people on the science park. They don't all respond, but it's a really good response rate, so it's representative. Our catchment area is huge. It's absolutely huge. We have ranges from people who walk to work from King's Hedges and Arbury, right on our doorstep, to elsewhere across the city, but also Norwich, London, East Anglia, generally over to the west, over to Bedford, over into Hertfordshire. It's absolutely enormous. Some of those people are able to come in by train, which is fantastic, and the new Cambridge South Station is great for the city, as well as just bringing more people in and housing areas into the 1 hour commute zone. But if you're trying to come in from the east and west, it's really, really difficult. So I mentioned I've moved house. I moved house for family reasons out to just near Newmarket, actually the same village as Andrew. There's a bit of a trend, but it's really difficult. It's impossible to use the train service for me to come into the science park unless I allow about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So it's not a practical solution. And I know plenty of people who work in Cambridge who travel in who have the same complaint. So one of the need is now. The solution is needed very quickly. And the chair of AstraZeneca spoke about this yesterday, one of many voices I heard yesterday, who said, yes, it is a big debating society. We need a solution. We need a quick decision. We need to get on with it, because the Cambridge Biomedical Campus down to the south is growing at an impressive rate. I'm just looking to someone who knows more about it than I do, but it's a major construction site at the moment, bringing more opportunities in. We focus a lot on linking employees to workplaces, but I've been speaking to one of the major sixth form colleges in Cambridge recently, Hills Road, they're seeing a significant drop off in attendance from sixth formers who just can't get into school. They can't get there. The buses are overcrowded if they're living on the busway. There have been speed restrictions that have made the journey untenable. It's quite expensive. They can't get in by car because their route to college isn't always compatible with the availability of parents' cars and so forth. It's a real issue for them. Now, we're looking to the future. We're looking for the next generation of talent to ease transport problems. It would be great to see a huge proportion of that coming from existing families based in Cambridge, which solves part of the problem. But if those kids are dropping out of college, they're not going to feed into the talent pool in the numbers that we need to continue the growth of this great city.
So, Philip, Andrew asked a very specific question about, as Jane said, huge geography needed for improvement in transport. What areas are you looking at? You're not just looking in the centre, or are you looking wider?
No, I mean, the study looks at Greater Cambridgeshire as an area. And obviously what it's also doing is looking at what is in existence, what is proposed. So we've got a number of busways that are in existence, a number of busways that are going through processes at the moment to come into place. East-West Rail, and we worked alongside East-West Rail, and this latest consultation has identified that an East station. So again, that's really significant. But then looking, all the work is saying, well, where are the hotspots? Where are the key employment destinations? Where are the access to social and health facilities? Where are the residents' key areas? How can these all be served? What are the sort of network properties that would need to enable that? And recognising that actually with a number of existing systems either in place and or being proposed, actually what does in a way that MRT look like? Does it start to look like something which is multimodal? Main interchanges, ability for people to get and swap. We're looking at that option of, well, if that's the case, is it sort of a mini DFL, so through ticketing option, so people can get on one mode, transfer to another to continue their get to their destination. And these are all elements that are going to be considered, because it might not be just one solution throughout, it might be a multiple parts of solutions which start to get joined together. And what are the missing pieces of that jigsaw to ensure that we do enable people to be able to go from where they are to where they need to get to and enjoy it.
So, Peter, same question for you, really. How do you make sure you're addressing the right problem and the scale of the problem? You're not just looking at a small, narrow transport problem. You're looking at the whole wider thing. How do you make sure it all fits together?
Well, I mean, various modes have different reach, frankly. For example, you wouldn't use VLR to travel maybe 30 miles outside of a city because it's not that type of system. Similarly, light rail probably has an effective range of about 20 kilometres. For example, looking at areas around Cambridge, a light rail system that stretches from Cambridge to Huntingdon or Haverhill, for example, where a lot of people come from to work in Cambridge, would be quite easily achievable, and it would be probably popular. What you wouldn't use it for is to stretch to Norwich, because it's just way outside its capability, and frankly it's just not made for that. That's more suited to heavy rail or even express buses, for example. So then you bring them into the environs of the mass rapid transit system, use interchanges for people to change mode and then get to where they want to get to. And there are lots of examples within relatively easy reach of here to see where it's been made to work. And you pick up Lyon in France, for example, France's second city. Yes, a lot bigger than Cambridge, but it's a good case study. They've got a well-integrated transit system that uses light rail, heavy rail, trolleybuses, buses, active travel, taxis, everything. It's operated by one organisation, and it works exceedingly well. And that's the key, I think, to getting it right, is selecting the right modes to deliver the right parts of it and then making it all work. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. That makes
God
excellent
for
sense. I'm going to come to Steve. We've got a question over there, and if anybody else got a question, do wave at me or stick up your hand. But come Steve first. Then, so with Coventry, how did you make sure that your VLR, your very light rail system, is addressing the overall need? How does it fit in with the wider transport questions?
So we've already got an all-electric bus network in the city. So that's the first step, is blending it in with the existing transport network that we've got. We're actually in a very similar stage of the process to what we've just been talking about here. We're doing a mass rapid transit study, looking at how we get people from our investment zone in the south of the city, and the former site of Coventry Airport, into the city centre, where we've got a very good rail connection into London, and then back out to the University Hospital, which is a major trip generator, and then back out to some really big areas of employment growth there. So the reason I said in my introduction was I kind of get to be not mode agnostic in today's conversation is because clearly you can tell from the ambition that I've talked about, we see that our ambition is to serve that route with VLR. We're going through a very similar process of working through a strategic outline business case to serve that growth corridor, really clear vision for growth. And we've got to the stage where we've down selected to a number of modes, which includes VLR as a possible mode. And that's what we're looking to push forward then, continue with the R&D, demonstrate that that's the right thing for our transport network, and then access that big chunk of transport capital funding that you will also be doing the same thing in due course in Cambridge. We're on a very similar journey in that stage, but in our case, we've kind of introduced a new technology into the discussion, going through a very similar process.
Excellent, thank you. As I say, open to questions. First, I'll come to you. But first of all, over here, if you could just give your name, and if you're from a company, tell them who you're from, or indeed a local authority.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. Tim Holmes from Majora's Estates. We're a property group based in Cambridge and have very much endorse the discussion. Question really around the challenges, and my take on it, given we've all talked about it a lot before, is that the biggest challenge is messaging the certainty of delivery and how it's going to be funded. And I'm really pleased that Peter's thinking about this carefully. We've all seen examples, and you know, Peter, you mentioned examples in other places. We know about Bordeaux, etc. But I suppose the question is, are we going to be able to get government to forward fund this up front? And the question for Philip and Peter from me in the development sector is, what are you going to expect from us? Because I think we're all very keen on the idea, but who's going to fund it up front? We don't want to have another go. We all know it's needed, but let's not do it in a haste. We want to think it through. So question, what do you want from us?
Philip, do you want to come first, then Peter?
So it's probably unlikely that when it comes to sort of implementation, that there'll be a government funding will be 100% funding. There'd be a blend of funding approaches, looking at how, in terms of serving particular areas, whether or not those areas are actually being developed out at the moment, or whether or not there can be some capture or agreement, maybe some SIL approach into that. So that whole sort of funding piece is part of the work that we're looking at. Sort of, what are those funding options? What can it look like? But it's probably unrealistic to expect 100% government funding. It's just So we do need to look at what we can do, and certainly as from a Cambridge Growth company perspective, and moving forward, looking at that sort of patient capital that we can try and inject into that, and that public-private blend to try and recognise how that upfront infrastructure can be put into place. And again, we're not like. It's unlikely that the whole of the network can get delivered all in one go. So it'll be like a phased approach. What are the key elements that need to be linked up first, and then that confidence to the next stage of that delivery, and so on. So it is staged approach. It will be a blended finance, undoubtedly, and that's still to be sort of worked through in the detail.
Peter.
Yeah, I was going to be a bit more direct and say we're going to ask you for it. I think Cambridge has two unique opportunities. The first one is they convert, and you're right, it's going to be a blend of finance from part government funded, but an ability to be able to use land value capture because of the scale of what they're going to do to be able to pay for a big part of it. And that's what I mean, we're going to be asking you for it. And I guess that's going to be an unashamed request from the mayor and his team and everybody else. Second thing that is really, really important about Cambridge is it's because it's looking at this now and the growth is forecasted into 2050, there's an opportunity to develop infrastructure-led development rather than developing and then saying, how the heck are we going to shoehorn this round these buildings, etc. So use the infrastructure to attract the inward investment and develop it in the way that makes it work rather than trying to retrofit a system to make it work in the future.
Okay, other questions? Got a question here, then there was one here, and then one there. So here first. Again, if you could give your name and where you're from.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So, Duncan McCunn. I do various things in the Cambridge ecosystem, and I'm a resident, so I'm going to ask it with that hat on, I think. We're talking about raising the capital to actually get this done. When it's up and running, how do we make it affordable? Because there will be a lot of investment here that probably you won't get a fare box to pay back for. So, is there a subsidy?
Will there be an
in mind?
operational subsidy on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, no, I knew that was coming my way. You're right. It's unlikely that you're going to get a fare box to pay for the full operating cost. There are examples where it does work, where it more than pays its operating cost. Manchester's one example. We borrowed a heck of a lot of money to build the system in Manchester because the government refused the funding. So fortunately, the guys who were behind it in Manchester said, well, we'll do it ourselves, which was really good of them. And the fare box now pays its operating costs and contributes to the repayments on the borrowings. So that's a perfect outcome almost. Would that be the same case in Cambridge? Possibly not. It depends on how well the system is firstly built and where the money comes from, and secondly, how well it attracts patronage and the level of the fare price, frankly, because you could make the fare box work, but you might have to charge people too much money to do it. So
then fewer people would use it.
Correct. Yeah. So you're going to drive away your fares effectively by making it too expensive. But the point is to get it fixed at the right point so that you're getting the right revenue, encourage use in other ways so that you drive the patronage onto the system, and that's when it starts to get closer to its operating cost. And then obviously the subsidy that the city or the region has to put into it becomes less and less as time develops. There are places that have done it very smart and smart usage. Cologne, for example, which is probably not a perfect example, but Cologne is a very big city in Germany, has a massive tram network, a very clever bus network that feeds the trams. Trams operate 24/7 because they carry parts to the various Volkswagen factories at night. Excuse me. And the way they drove patronage was to prevent people parking in the city. So they could drive into the city, but there was no point stopping because there was nowhere to stop. So they drive in, drive back out. And if they want to go in the city to spend time in the city, they use public transport. And that drove the patronage, which drove the revenue, which covers the operating cost. So you don't have to take very strict measures of closing roads to traffic, but you can do it in different ways.
So, Philip, do you need an operating subsidy? You won't know yet, will you?
No, exactly. We wouldn't know yet. But I think, as Peter said, there are different mechanisms that can be sort of levered in, and that all has to sort of be worked through. I think as well that the key thing is that phased approach to delivery as well, because actually when you identify what's going to be the most beneficial first phases to come through, that can hopefully start to drive a really good revenue stream into it as well. It starts to tail off the further out you have to go, you get potentially less patronages, but then actually you start to look at different modes as well.
And can I just ask, in Coventry, are you assuming there'll be an operating subsidy, or? No assumptions at the moment.
And no assumption at the moment. We still need to do the same sort of commercial modelling, looking at what the fare box will be, looking at the overall operating costs. We're still working through the answering the very same questions that you're answering here.
Yeah. So we had other questions. We had a question here.
Thanks. Steve Beale, I'm the Chief Executive of Freeport East, which is a special economic zone over Felixstowe. The region's got kind of evolving experience now with autonomous vehicles. Port of Felixstowe, Industrial Park, I think in Cambridge you've got some pilots, Milton Keynes, Warwick. I just wonder what assumptions you're making right now about the role that autonomous vehicles could play in future transport networks, and whether you're seeing that that has a particular impact on how you're thinking about design or indeed the economic models that might be possible.
Do you mean autonomous vehicles just as public service vehicles, or just the fact that people will be moving towards autonomous vehicles generally?
Well, I think the use of autonomous vehicles for buses, light rail, I mean, whatever it might be, right? But I think which is something that the previous Mayor James Palmer kept talking about, autonomous vehicles, which at that time was actually far more pie in the sky than it is now, because they are now operating on the roads in the US and coming to the UK this year. And as Transport Minister, I passed legislation that legalised it in the UK. I'll just say that. So, what are the assumptions about autonomous vehicles?
So, at the moment, we're completely sort of mode agnostic. We've looked at all the previous schemes that have been presented through. It's a really interesting question because obviously Cambridge is highly innovative. So actually, and it's a city of the future. It's in the mix at the moment and going through the process and being assessed. So we are looking at all modes and we're looking at all options, and that's exactly the way we should be doing it as well.
Yeah, Jane, come in.
Just adding sort of a wider science park perspective. I'm a director of the UK Science Park Association as well. I spent decades in this sector with people saying about autonomous vehicles, and I've recently moved from "oh, not that again" as my reaction to
it's
yes,
coming. It's here.
It's really serious. It's one of the huge advantages of them is they don't get tired. We've recently put in a shuttle between Cambridge North Station and the Science Park, and the driver needs a break. So there's a gap in the service because the driver needs a break. So if he was an autonomous driver, he would not need a break. So there are real advantages to that, and particularly if you look at antisocial hours, nighttime economy. So again, we talk a lot about trip budgets at peak times. We have a lot of cleaners who come onto the park out of hours, travel home at really antisocial hours. Many of them don't have private cars. And we get asked a lot, what can we do as a science park to enable those workers to get home quickly and safely? And also, Cambridge does have a nighttime economy. There's much more going on there than you might suspect. It's not the sleepy city that it's sometimes portrayed. How do the people who work in hospitality get home? How do people like me, who go out for dinner or to go to networking events, who want to come home at 10, 11, 12 at night, how do I get out of the city when the last bus back to the Science Park is currently 8 p.m? It makes me drive in the rush hour, which is daft. So I'm really excited about autonomous vehicles and the potential that they now provide to unlock a lot of the more marginal communities and travel times.
Peter, do you think autonomous vehicle technology, which is here, is now operating in the US, is coming to the UK, do you think it will change public transport solutions? It will clearly change private use.
You want it in one word, or do you? Autonomous vehicles are great in the right space, and that's segregated from people and traffic. Honest admission to make, I was in London last week, and I noticed the trial of the autonomous taxi that's happening in London with these cameras stuck all over it, and I deliberately stepped off the pavement in front of it. I thought, I'll test it.
And you're still here.
So it worked. However, I then watched it take 15 minutes to do another 100 metres. Yeah. In a busy, pedestrianised environment or with mixed road traffic, their use is limited. I don't know if anybody wants to try it go on YouTube and search for a driver's eye view of a tram going through Manchester city centre, and it'll take you through from Market Street through Piccadilly Gardens and down to St Peter's Square. An autonomous vehicle is going to take a heck of a long time to get there. People stand on the tracks talking, they push prams along the track in front of the tram, they cycle into the side of them and look up as if to say, who put that there? And the behaviours of people, because it's an open public space in Piccadilly Gardens, are extraordinary. But tram drivers are able to move that in a way that an autonomous vehicle wouldn't because of its reaction to obstruction. So yes, I think they've got a massive amount of potential in a segregated network, such as DLR, for example. But in a heavily populated urban environment with mixed road traffic, I think it's limited.
At the moment, but the technology is changing.
Well, yeah. Well, we've all watched Star Wars, so you never know, do you?
Yeah. Steve, do you have anything to...
Yeah, I mean, just to say the next phase of VLR research and development, we will be looking to build autonomous capability into the new vehicle. The trials that you'll see in Coventry will feature a driver, and if I was betting, I would expect that the first routes that we open in Coventry you will see a driver on the trams. But I don't think we could be serious in this space with developing a new transport mode at this time without putting the effort in to make it to do the groundwork for it to become autonomous. And that is something that we are interested in. And we are interested in doing it in non-segregated settings. We'll have to see how successful we are, but that is the aim. We will be aiming to get there with an autonomous VLR car.
Yeah. So other questions? We had, yeah.
Hi all, Elliot Page, KMC Transport Planning. It was a question for Steve, really, just about the traffic management of the proposition. And what I mean by that is that a few people have referenced kind of cross-city connectivity in Cambridge as being the greatest challenge. How do you achieve that? And I suppose the question to you is, have you had to wrestle with the thorny political issues of kind of road closures or charging? Because Cambridge has a history of trying to wrestle with those issues and ultimately coming up short. And it will be a kind of political football going forward. Public transport is easy if you don't have to wrestle for carriageway space and against cars.
So one of the advantages that we've got with regards to road closures during installation is the fact that the installation time will be so much quicker than other mass rapid transport modes. So it will be less disruptive when it goes down, and that will make that conversation easier. Am I sitting here thinking that when I put the first very light rail route in through Coventry, I'm not going to have some difficult conversations with politicians and with residents? Of course I am. You will in any setting like that. It does need to be dealt with. But the really flexible track design that we've got will give us some options that will probably mean that the final answer will be less difficult for politicians and citizens to get comfortable with. But all that stuff is going to be a reality with VLR, as it would be with any other mass transit mode, I'm sure.
Can I ask that political question, both, really to all of you actually, but I was thinking to Philip and Peter, that I noticed while I was at MP for South Cambridgeshire and there were various transport plans, that every transport plan had a very active and vocal community group against it, campaigning vigorously. And everyone always complains about anyone doing anything, and they always complain about lack of engagement. But do you have any, clearly you need to consult the public and get engagement and get sort of political support, but do you have any particular experience from your point, Peter, or solutions to how you do that and how you actually do get the public behind it?
I've lots of experience. I spent 10 years in Manchester developing Metrolink and spent quite a few occasions on the BBC's Red Sofa, and I've been asked live on television if I'm going to resign. And I said, no, quitters resign. People who want to get something done, carry on, get it done. But yeah, there will always be people that don't agree with what you want to do, but that's not a reason not to do it. And if the majority of people want to see it work and you get it to work properly, it's amazing how the people that were detractors in the first place become your best supporters. And quite a lot of those people, in my experience, that are very vocal when you're trying to build something and trying to get it going, when it actually works, they're like, you know what, I never thought you'd do it and it's fantastic. So all I can say is to people is just have faith. Make sure you do it because you know it's right, prove that it works, and then see what the reaction is. But don't be stopped because there's an initial negativity from a small group.
So, Philip, you're developing the strategic outline case, and you said you'll present it to government. You're working with the CPCA in some way. Do you have an engagement plan on it, though?
So we've done some selected stakeholder engagement as part of this early stage piece of work, talking to businesses and others, other interested groups, to ensure that we've got a big understanding of the nature of the scale of the problem that's in place. Certainly into the next stage, we'll be looking at doing some wider engagement within that process, and I share Peter's experience as well in terms of having delivered a number of transport initiatives and schemes. Nobody likes change. Nobody likes change to start with, and sometimes what you do is you can get a lot of really great insight as to how things might adapt and be slightly altered, but to actually to enable you to actually achieve that same outcome in maybe a slightly modified way. So you can always get really interesting and really good information from that engagement piece, and then when you take it through and get delivered exactly the same experiences, actually didn't think it would be as good as this, and now it's brilliant, and actually my journey time is so much better, and I didn't think this development would look like this. So it's, you have to go through a bit of pain, but that engagement piece is really important through that, because you've got to keep people informed, you've got to actually get their input into the process as well, and then on the outturn of it, though, it's really great to see people using either transport initiatives or in a wider development piece. So,
other questions? Another question over there.
Hello, my name is Adam Leishman. I'm the owner of Sendle Group, which owns Whippet, which is a local bus operator.
Yeah.
And actually, we are operating autonomous buses at the moment with Cambridge Connector in Cambridge, and I believe it's the only live bus service in operation on open roads in the UK at the moment. So I just put that out there.
Do you have a safety driver?
Yeah, we have someone sitting there, but hands off.
But hands off. Okay, I didn't know.
I believe it's the only one in the UK at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's already here.
I didn't know that was happening.
Already here in Cambridge.
Yeah. It hasn't run anyone over yet.
No.
No.
But my question, the last 5 years I've been in Hong Kong running a large bus operation there, 1,700 buses, 1 million passengers a day. And I worked very closely with the MTR and trying to get the buses working with the trains. You talked about that earlier. It's critical to have a network approach. But in a city where 90% of users, 90% of trips use public transport, and the MTR still struggled to get a number of their new projects to stack up. But they have such an innovative model where it's not just land value capture, it's actually doing the whole development around stations through the MTR. So you have the operator and the land developer creating a mixed-use development around the station. And so it's about urban planning, stopping urban sprawl, creating density around stations, as well as funding the infrastructure cost. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to think more bigger about how we tackle other problems at the same time by using a similar approach, because the British gave that to Hong Kong to start with, but we don't seem to do that very well here, because we have infrastructure projects that are very one-dimensional, but they have a huge impact on urban planning, and we can get a lot of benefit from that if we do it together.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, I've actually worked quite a lot on this. The UK is totally useless at land value capture, basically. And I did. So one of the things when I worked for the Mayor of London, I was in charge of economic development. Boris asked me for £1 billion to build a Northern Line extension, 2 stops. And I actually persuaded the Treasury to do tax increment financing, which is a version of land value capture, where all the business rates in the geographic zone around Battersea Power Station are hypothecated to pay for the Northern Line extension for 30 years. And that funds the borrowing and it is now built, it's now operating, and it's transformed that environment. But in terms of funding, then you're looking at the options for funding. You said it needed blending funding. Do you have any solutions on land value capture and how you do it within a UK context?
Well, I'm probably going to sort of dodge that by saying we're still looking at all of these elements, but I'm going to pick up on the other aspect of the conversation piece, which is around actually that integrated design, and that is actually fundamental, and that is something that we're definitely looking at taking forward. Actually, it's really interesting that a number of developments that have taking place, and in and around Greater Cambridgeshire area. Northstowe has the guided busway, Waterbeach, a new station coming forward. So those integrations and that development aligned with transportation is key and crucial, and it's certainly something that we want to ensure that we drive forward as we go. How to actually create that co-location and take advantage of the transport, and to drive patronage right from the word go as well.
I've worked a lot with MTR. I get it. They're a very smart organisation, and we have good examples in this country of doing design, construct, maintain projects, or even design, construct, operate and maintain projects. What we don't have is the truly integrated approach of MTR, which is design it, construct it, operate it, maintain it, and oh, and by the way, you're responsible for all the development around it. And that is taking it to the nth degree, I suppose. And who knows, that could possibly work in a place like Cambridge. There's enough scope for it. There's certainly enough
huge value created out of it.
Yep. Massive value creation in terms of land value capture plus the incoming development. So yeah, it's a model that could potentially work. Yeah, interesting.
Steve, do you want to say anything?
I was just going to say, I love the concept of densification around stations, making more of the land uses in and around your really strong transport connections. That idea just rings really strongly with me, and yeah, encourage everybody to think in those lines. It makes a great deal of sense to me.
We've got time for one last question. Does anybody have a last question? All bursting away. No. I'll ask one thing. What do you think? We've been talking for years, decades, about the need to improve transport in Cambridge, and obviously you've got the strategic outline case coming now. But big picture, sort of 50 years hence, I mean, what do you think there will be or could be? What's the sort of big vision that you could have for a city like Cambridge? What should we all aspire to? We'll start here and then go along the line.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll gaze into my crystal ball.
Yeah, just paint a big picture, something for us all to aspire to and say, yes, we should get behind this.
Well, I think the great thing is that who knows what will work look like in 50 years. We talk a lot about this in my sector. We have no idea. We have no idea what the energy situation will look like. Will we all be sustainable? Will we all have ditched our cars? And will we all be using personal transport pods or public transport, whatever it is? The thing that gives me most hope is the younger generation. Because if you look at the under 26s, a huge percentage now choose not to drive. They expect, for reasons of planet, of climate protection, and also quality of life, they want to live and work and travel in a sustainable way. Not quite the 15-minute city model, but probably not far off it. And this isn't just a Cambridge phenomenon. We're seeing this across the UK. And I think their voice and their numbers and their needs will drive our own improvements big time at pace. And I think, therefore, in the future, we probably won't be talking about traffic jams. We won't be talking about personal preference in travel, because it's a bit like smoking. I'm old enough to remember working in smoky offices. The thought of banning it seemed bizarre. But now the opposite is true. And I genuinely foresee a future where personal polluting, congesting travel will not be acceptable, because we'll have great alternatives.
Philip, we at the beginning we laid out the problem of a gridlocked medieval city. What's the alternative vision for the future?
Obviously, it's a fully integrated solution that actually enables people to be able to get where they want to get affordably, safely, reliably, and also covering and ensuring that that's providing accessibility to all the communities. So ensuring that people can get to their healthcare, in the most deprived areas, in the most wealthy areas. It's you don't know. You can just it just needs to be throughout, complete, and providing that journey, if the journeys are needed, in that safe, reliable, affordable way for all people.
I think we can all get behind that. Peter.
Yeah, I think for me it would be something that sits around an untimetabled service that is turn up and go. that is easy to change modes and to interchange, that is reasonably priced. So I mean, I'm sort of describing utopia, I guess, but
sounds good to me.
Effectively, Cambridge has the space to do it. Not space is in terms of volume, but space as in terms of mind space and time to get it put in place before the development fully reaches its potential. And there are places that get very close to that, and they're not too far. A gentleman over there mentioned Bordeaux. There are 3 reasons to visit Bordeaux. 1, it's a heck of a nice city. 2, the transport system's superb. And by the way, they make a decent bottle of wine.
Oh, so good wine. Yeah.
There are 3 good reasons to visit it. But really, that utopia has to be easy to use, relatively simple, relatively cheap, and it encourages you to leave the car, motorcycle, whatever at home, and use public transport flexibly. And that it doesn't matter what the mode is or how it does it. If it works, people will use it.
And Steve, finally, vision for Coventry. What are you going to do?
Well, clearly, I would love to see people getting around Coventry on VLR. But much like a lot of the other speakers, really, what I would like to see is people not fearing giving up their cars. People not, that pang of nervousness that you get to people when you suggest that they might use public transport to get somewhere. And you can see them thinking, how's it going to work? How am I going to pay for it? When's it going to turn up? Will it turn up? I'd love it to be VLR for Coventry and for places like Cambridge as well. But the thing that I'd really like to see is people just having choices about getting around that don't involve cars unless they're needed. I'm not anti-car. I can drive. I don't choose to drive very much. It's not really for me. I'm lucky enough not to have to. But I would like people to have choices and not to have their choices. It's really sad to hear about people not making it to sixth form because they can't get there. That's a real shame. I'd like people not to have choices taken away by poor transport options and have, able to get to a good job without worrying about it with the best and most flexible options possible.
Well, Steve, thank you. And thank you all for ending on a very positive note. And we'll all agree Cambridge has got major transport problems at the moment, but it's good to hear that there are plans afoot for solutions, whatever it may be, whether it's rail or tram or some other autonomous vehicle, maybe not. But anyway, thank you. Please give a cheers to our panel. And thank you all for coming. Thank you.